Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review episode 4 of Blade. So, really, I've just been bogged down by a lot of other shows going on simultaneously at the same time. Loki just dropped, another episode of Superman and Lois just happened, and so really timelining exactly when this thing is coming out. But yeah, I just got bogged down by all of those, so I got a little delayed with getting Blade, another episode of Blade out. Really, I thought that this episode was pretty interesting. They go into the whole science experimenting of vampires in this episode. We also have Krista, who is to do a lot of side projects and a lot of just things to, I guess, continue to prove her worth to these people. We are to also have Blade actually be doing some actual, what do you think, interrogating. We have Blade, who cannot stop interrogating people, finding out information, and then going in this episode, going and finding an environment where they had been housing these freak show like vampires, and of course Blade is to take them out in this episode. We also have Krista, who is reconnecting with her mother, because reasonably Krista has to come back home to just kind of talk to her mother, and kind of her mother is mentioning to Krista, it's like, well, you're the only one that's left, so make these moments count, kind of thing. So going into this, we are also to premiere a new detective in this episode. A detective, Ray Collins. And I guess he'll be the new detective throughout the show, because there always has to be some detective thing going on in here. We have where this detective is kind of doing a lot of the catch up of things that have happened recently, because I guess he's kind of stuck doing some odd cases. So with that said, I think let's go into really almost spoilers, because there's not much to even talk about this episode. Kirsta is to go and do a drop off project. She is to also go and do some projects with Chase. It seems that within this episode, Chase is like, "Hey, how about we go on? We go and do this. Hey, how about we go on and go and do this?" And so we have Krista, who is to consistently have Marcus just on her, basically But we also have at some point two people going at it in a hotel room, so that might interest some people in this episode. That is to lead to really just Blade breaking it up because interrogation. But still, it's an interesting kind of addition to this episode. If we are to not exactly see any actual main characters going at it, it's good to see two random people just somewhere in the show just going on down to town, if you know what I mean. So yeah, with that said, there's really just a lot of the side stuff to go on with this episode. So let's get on with it, and let's go into spoilers about this episode. So it is about that time to go out of our way to say it is spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time again to spoil this episode. So let's get into the Krista stuff. And no, wait, let's get into the Blade stuff, and then we'll worry about the Krista stuff, because the Blade stuff, honestly, sadly enough, we have to count the minutes of how much time Blade is actually on this show. But no, wait, let's get into the new detective thing. Let's get into the Ray Collins thing, then Blade, then Krista. I didn't think of this order before this whole thing was started, so now that we're here. So, we have Ray Collins, who is to basically piggyback off of everything that Detective Boone had done in prior episodes. We have Ray Collins, who is going and trying to investigate what Boone had done, and he doesn't understand a lick of it. He's like, I don't know what's going on with this. Because Ray is eventually starting to connect some of these crimes together, because Ray is starting to see a tooth that is to seemingly match one hole of a bag that was related to Boone, who was trying to escape from his bag early on in one of the episodes. We also have Collins, who is to check on the police officer who had died in one of the early episodes that Boone was to nibble off of. So that is what is just going on with this new detective. We have Krista, who is to, in the very beginning of this, have her wound slowly but surely healing. And so we have Marcus, who's like, well, that's because you need more blood. You need to drink more blood. And so Marcus goes and just like pokes a hole in his arm and just like puts a little like smearing of blood onto Krista's chest, like, hope that feels better there, buddy. And so we have Marcus, who is like taking off this one towelette and to remind Krista, like, hey, don't forget to drink your blood. Chase is also coming in there trying to make Krista really uncomfortable, taking one bit of Marcus's blood and And so we are to have Marcus, who really is relying on Krista lately because Fritz is on the fritz because he's dead. So we have Marcus, who depends on Krista going and getting this package that she is to deliver to this girl named Vanessa. And so Krista is asking Marcus, is like, well, should I know what this package entails? And Marcus is like, well, should you know? Should you? So Krista goes, takes the package, and delivers it to a woman at a wedding. And so we see this one girl who has the familiar tattoo mentioning that Vanessa has been waiting for you. And so we have Krista, who goes to this person who is catering this wedding, and Krista drops off this bag to Vanessa and comes back to eventually get orders from Chase that eventually they are going to go on a mission together. But we'll put a pin in that and we'll get back to that. So we have Krista early on in this episode, who is to see her mother. And Krista's mother is to, I think her name is Lisa. We have Krista's mother, who is to tell Krista that she needs to take care of herself, because since her brother is now dead, that, like, really, like, Krista is all that she has left. And so we have Krista, who is looking at this old jewelry box that I guess still plays music, luckily enough for her. And eventually she is to take this jewelry box to her new place, and eventually Chase is to be there listening to this jukebox while sorting through Krista's clothes. Let's go into now the Blade stuff. So, that man named Blade, he's probably doing a thing or two, right? So, we have people going at it in this hotel room, and all of a sudden they are hearing a ruckus. They're like, what could that sound be? Could it just be a horrifying thing that is going to happen to us next? And surefire enough, we have Kane who is smashing through this wall. Kane, of course, is the Legionnaire guy that I mentioned in previous episodes. That he seems to also be taking care of certain vampires, but also he is selling vampire ash to people. And so that is horrible. So we have Blade who also busts through this wall to eventually say, hey, naked people, you should probably get out of here because I have to do the interrogation thing. And they're like, yeah, we should probably leave, you know? So Blade is to eventually see Kane jump on this bed. And so we have Blade who throws his sword into the bed and so takes Kane's two legs and tries to pull his legs in between this Blade to just say, hey, buddy, like, if you're not going to tell me the truth as I'm going to interrogate you, your butthole is going to be a little bit larger, if you know what I mean. So, we have Kane, who is to mention a guy that he knows named Sans. And Sans is a vampire that is at a casino that it seems that he likes the darkness as much as possible because there's something wrong with him. There's something that he had been experimented on and been tortured, and just he continues to look horrible because I guess there is no healing that. So we have Blade go, you know what? Like, this Sans guy sounds pretty cool. High five, Kane. Oh, by the way, Kane, that the vampire thing, the thing where you kill vampires, keep up with that. And so Blade is to leave to eventually go back and talk to the Reverend that he was talking to in previous episodes. Or previous episode. And so we have Blade who dumps into this Reverend's truck a big batch of cash. And so we have this Reverend who's like, hey man, like, so did you take care of Kane, I take it? And Blade is like, no. Like, if anything, like, I still need him because he's the one kind of giving me information. And plus also, like, he's also killing vampires, so thumbs up to that. And the Reverend is like, but wait a minute, he's still dealing vampire ash to people, and, like, I don't like that. And so Blade is like, well, yeah, but again, like, the enemy of the enemy is my friend kind of thing. And so the Reverend is like, you know what, I get it. Like, I know what I'm trying to do is just, like, kind of piddly compared to you. Like, what you're doing is you're actually, like, I'm trying to, like, heal people from a lesser illness, and you're killing a disease. And so I get it. Like, I get what you have to do. But, like, if anything, people are still going to get vampire ash, and that means that what I'm doing here is pointless. The Reverend is talking. And so Blade is like, well, hey man, like, if money doesn't help, then maybe I should take it back from you. And the Reverend's like, no, I can use the money. I can use it. But so, like, Blade and the Reverend are just coming into an impasse where it's like, I have to keep doing what I'm doing, and Blade is the same way. Like, the Reverend is mentioning, like, well, I have to kind of do what I'm doing, and Blade has to do what he has to do, and, like, there is no mid ground to that. There is no, like adjustment. There is sadly just, like, Blade still has to continue doing what he's doing. So we push on. So we have Blade make it to this casino, and he is to meet a guy named Sans, a guy that I think, like, I've seen him in quite a bit of stuff. The guy who plays Sans in this episode, like, man, I think I've seen him on, God, that one sci-fi show, where, God, he was a werewolf in one show. Like, I think it was, like, called, God, what was it called? He was a werewolf, and he was like keeping safe this one like facility, and the girl from like Stargate SG-1, the show, was in that show, and she was kind of like the doctor, keeping everybody like keeping everything like copacetic, and God, if only I could remember what that show is. I might have to pause just to figure out what that show is, so that way I don't look stupid here. So let me pause here and figure out what that show was. Sanctuary. Oh my God, I knew it started with an S. I was like, yeah, I know it was a sci-fi show, and I know it was goofy, and I know it had some kind of like environment title of something, but it was Sanctuary. Thank God I figured that out. So this guy from Sanctuary, so we have Blade, who is to eventually just take a flashlight to Sans, because Sans does not want to go with Blade. And so we have Sans who's like, hey man, you can't like kill me in front of all these people, someone will notice. And we immediately have Shen, who is all of a sudden just jumping on top of this casino table, like just speaking all kinds of words like I'm Godzilla and all this other weird goofy stuff. And so we have Blade going, are you sure anyone's gonna notice that you're gonna die? And so we have Blade taking Sans out, and so Sans is to mention that that he had gone and played some vampire poker game, and come to find out, Sans was a cheat. But we find out Sans is going and doing this poker game with all these vampires, to eventually find out that there were other people who ended up grabbing every single one of these vampires in this casino game, to eventually go and be locked up and to be put away and be experimented on. And so Blade is like, oh, well, great. Well, like, it seems like this guy was the only one who was able to escape out of there when eventually, like, heads were rolling in there. But it seems like there are some vampires that are still left in that environment, and so Blade has to go and clean it out. So we have Blade, who is ushered into this environment by Sans, and so Blade is going and eventually starting to find there are quite a few vampires that are left. To the point to where Sans is actually asking for a weapon, like something big, because really his eyes are all effed up. And Blade gives him a flashlight, and like, here you go. Eventually, Sans gets attacked by one of the poker players that were bitter that he had 4 aces. And so we have this guy trying to attack on Sans, and Sans just decides, like, well, F it, like, I'm going to use this flashlight against this guy and kill him, and so he does. So we have Blade starting to knock off some of these vampires, and we, funny enough, just start seeing Shen, who's just kind of like covered with dust. It looks funny. So we eventually have Blade, who is using all of his weapons at his disposal, like together, combining them. Like he has like his big gun, but he also has his sword that he's like crazily taking all of these vampires out. And so we eventually have this huge, gigantic, like Frankenstein-like monster that is to come out, that looks like all kinds of messed up, has like barbed wire and all kinds of goofiness going out, and we have Blade who is to shoot this vampire and take it down. Like, it's a cool visual, but man, do they just kill it right away. Isn't that garbage? So, we have Blade who's just like, well, I guess my job is done for the night. And so they let Sans go and they don't kill him. I'm like, wow, that's surprising, but I guess Blade can again use Sans as an informant, so I guess that's kind of a well that's still there. So we are now, I think, covering most of the Blade stuff, so let's get back into Krista stuff. So we have Krista who is to go out with Chase to go to some like AA meeting, but it's not. Like I think it has something to do with Chase trying to come up with a story to appeal to uh, the garbage people of life. People that are used to going and hitting and slapping on women. Uh, because we have Chase who mentions how strong she is and how no one will be able to hurt her ever again. And so, after Chase is to talk about this harrowing story, we start to have guys who are mentioning to Chase, like, well, hey, little lady, I like that story that you mentioned. It's like, I love a strong woman. And so Chase is like, well, yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing that you get any woman whatsoever. And so we eventually have Krista and Chase pick their two to go out and just beat the living crap out of and kill them and drink them. We, of course, have Krista who is to of course, not drink, but Chase is to eventually snap the neck of Krista's man, and eventually there are two guys coming out of the coming off from the street to ask both Krista and Chase, "Hey, are you guys okay?" And Chase mentions uh, that the man that she was with, oh yeah, like if anything, my boyfriend's just drunk. And so they're like, oh, see you later. And so they go on about their day. So we, I think, cover a bulk of the Krista stuff, but uh, there is also one moment where Krista is to talk to Blade and to mention Aurora, how eventually she is going to try to find a way to get Aurora to Blade. Um, Whether he is to have to forcibly break in and get this stuff, or uh, really Krista has to really butter up some folks and eventually get Aurora so she can like pass it off to Blade, just be like, hey, like take a sample of my blood or something and see if you can kind of concoct this whole Aurora thing. But we have Krista who is to eventually start making her way through the laboratory part of this house that she is living in with Marcus and Chase and whoever. And so we have Krista who is going through into the sciencey part, and eventually she is to get through these sections, and eventually she is to see these green vials of what we are to naturally assume is Aurora. And so we have Krista who makes it so far that really it's just her seeing the cases of this Aurora. And we have all of a sudden a security guard that's kind of walking around, kind of double checking things. And so Krista is kind of she's kind of like holding her body up against this wall until this security guard passes and she is to jump back down. So she is to tell Blade exactly where this stuff is And Blade is like, well, that's great and all, but like, I'm not going to break in there. If anything, like, I can't actually go and get this stuff. Like, if anything, I could probably break in there and vampires could counter what I do. And like, 'cause it's this whole like react and encounter and whichever. And so for any time that Blade is to think, oh well, my main thing is that I need to get Fritz dies. I need to go and get Aurora is probably going to be gonzo by the time that Blade wants to go and get it. Because it's the whole like cause and effect kind of thing, where it's like the counterbalancing of Blade wants to get this, it's gone, it's dead, it cannot be a thing that Blade is going to get now. Um, but at the very end of this episode, we have Blade who is to go and check this this doctor out, to be able to get information from this doctor. And so we have Blade who is just start going and roaming through into this doctor's place, and he ends up finding out that it's a real legitimate like doctor's spot. It's not like some kind of like bootleg or underground doctor spot. No, like this doctor sees numerous patients. He sees numerous different kinds of people. Like at some point, there's a picture of him kissing a baby. I guess naturally assuming that this doctor has even performed stuff with babies at some point. So really, that's just where this episode ends. And I guess that's where my review ends. So I am going to get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.